It's time to strap in and get ready. The Insight NBA team is in the arena, bringing you the ultimate play-by-play on who's hot and who's not to help you win your leagues and dominate your mates. You're now hooping with your hosts, Matty G, Skitty, and Mally for the Insight NBA show.
Brought to you by our own Patreon, where you can absolutely see the new NBL show. Matty, you've just fired up while waiting in the waiting room here. You've put a brand new NBL show up for Supercoach.
Mate, yeah, good episode. Look, it's all about Milwaukee Bucks hero, Jalen Galloway. So,
do I get him in my team this week?
No.
Okay, good. That's good to know.
Played 3 minutes last week. Got a shoulder injury.
Like I say, 99% Mattrix, 1% Hammer, and all the rest is just me pestering you to get it in. This is why we're here, though, because we do love basketball. And today we took part. Matty, it was our first 10-person. We've done a 12, we've done a 14, but it was our first 10-person mock draft today. Industry one, mate. How'd you feel about it?
Yeah, I feel really good. Pretty happy. Got sniped a few times. I've had to change some rankings in on my big draft board. Just some blokes like Onyeka Okongwu. Like, I've just fell into the trap in 3 or 4 mocks, just expecting him to be there in the early hundreds, late 90s, and getting taken in the 80s. Just because I'm like, oh, I'll take, who do I take? Like a Tyler Hero or somebody like that. No, yeah. Onyeka will be there next round, and he just wasn't. So these mocks are just really about adjusting my rankings to make sure I get my guys. But if I ended up with this come in a couple weeks before the season, if this was my real team, I'd be really happy.
100%. And this is what we do as analysts. We're moving our yardstick, and our barometers are changing all the time. And this was an industry mock draft as well, like we should say. And a big shout out, the biggest of all of the loves and the shout outs. I can't make a love heart with a fractured wrist properly. It's more like a little kinky. Won't say that word again, but big shout out, big love, I can't, it's like the YMCA. Steve at Podcast BF for putting this on for 10 of us today. Well done to him. Thank you so much, Steve, for doing that. It had Steve, of course, as the host, you and me. It had Kingy, friend of the show from FBI Basketball International and from down the road here in Canberra. Sloan Piver from Sporting News and NBA Australia. Raph Johnson from Roto World. Noah Rubin from Roto World and FBI as well. Mike from Watch the Boxes, Mike Catrone. Alex Reclean, again, huge fan of the show. Love the man, RotoWire and DraftKings. And Puppy Roy, my boy at NBA Fantasy Puppy, who was even launching a Filipino versus the world fantasy comp this year. It was thick, it was fast, and it was, to be honest, Mattrix, I'm going to say it was probably one of my most perfect drafts that I've done so far in the year. It kept on falling my way, and it's I'm going to say it's perfect for a couple of reasons. One, it was one of the drafts where if you do it and you're completely happy with every pick on the board, but there's also options, like you said before. Like if you could change it, like, yeah, you could change a pick here or there. Guys got sniped from you. But when you're playing, Matty, isn't there no greater thrill in fantasy where you get to your pick and there's like 2 or 3 of the guys that you want sitting there and you're spoilt for choice?
Yeah. There's no better delight, I would say, than getting there and having a little smorgasbord. It's like you're at a party, right? And you walk across and you see the party pies and the spring rolls and everything. Like there's nothing worse when you get there and it's just those weird little samosa things that I'm just not into it.
Or the mini quiches?
Yeah, no, I'm not. Look, I'll enjoy a quiche at home, but not at a party. I want the sausage rolls. I want the party pies. I want the spring rolls. But yeah, samosas and look, and sometimes I found myself taking a samosa in this draft. Can I be honest?
I think you might have taken a couple of samosas. I took all the spring rolls. In fact, I actually ordered out some dim sims, and I don't know how they found themselves onto the menu. And I'm holding them, they're going, "How did you get the dim sims?" I'm like, they were just there. You also took all
the sweet chili sauce.
I took all of the sweet chili sauce. I got to admit, if I'm using my dip, I'm using it very well on my chips. I did have pick number 1, which means straight away I'm spoiled for choice. And I did take Jokic off. I wasn't going to do another Wemby build. I've done that a couple of times lately. By couple, I mean 1. in another one. But I decided to go back to my old horse, Jokic. So going down the first 10 picks, because it was a 10-teamer, let's go through up to you and say no surprises, I don't think you could say, apart from some shift. Jokic, Wemby, SGA, Luka, Tyrese, Joel Embiid. You took Giannis with your first pick. You there have the choice to go Davis, Trae Young, Sabonis, because that's what's happened up next off the board. Kingy was doing a like non-specialist punt. He was just doing a non-punt thing. Check out his work on that one and his recap. It's really interesting because he's then paired that, Maddie, with Chet Holmgren, a couple of big boys off the board straight away.
Yeah, look, I can't get around taking Chet this early in a draft, and it looks okay in paper after when you have a look at Kingy's team. But realistically, I would be waiting a little bit for that because I like the assurances of some of these Tatums and your Dono Mitchells and some of these other guys that you can see get taken later on in the second round. To be honest, I love Sabonis in anywhere between 9 and 15, though. Sabonis is a real target for me this year.
And I think one of the coolest things about a 10-person mock draft, Maddie, compared to like a 12 or a 14, is the dudes get moved up the board a little bit. Like the rank, like you have more of a chance of getting some of the guys who you're going to miss out. The wait isn't as long. So when it came back to my pick at 20, usually that's like pick 24. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like you get like this, oh, Jesus, you have a bit more fun with your draft. And so with that one, Kingies after that, James Harden, the news obviously today of Kawhi Leonard, his knee inflammation or an off-season procedure there for him could be his training camp is a bit impaired. Boy, is his value again. In a 12-teamer, this is the 12th pick. It's James Harden. Then to see 13th being Tatum was a bit of a shock by Sloan. Great pickup for him if you can get him. Don Mitchell, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Booker, Kyrie, Ant Edwards, and LaMelo Ball sitting there for me at pick 20. Maddie, do you roll the dice when you've got LaMelo Ball this season? And where are you comfortable taking him?
Look, this is about ceiling for me being comfortable taking him, but it's pretty hard for you having pick 1 because he's just not going to be there by the time you get back to yours at like pick 40. Obviously, you've went out and got your guy here, but for me, anywhere after that 20, I'm relatively comfortable. But I think if I'm in a cash league and I'm in some pretty big ones, you're talking $100, you're talking $200, everybody buying in. Yeah. I start to get a bit wary about taking LaMelo Ball because he has derailed seasons before. He's derailed my seasons before. Yes, does he owe me? Maybe, but I can just see, him becoming Alonzo in a couple years if this continues.
And great news today out of camp, Lonzo Ball, full participant in a mini Bulls camp and is expected to be ready to go for the season, which is a huge recovery. Mate, take us through the third round. I'll start with my pick and then take us through the rest of it. I managed to get my other guy, Fred VanVleet. This is picking at 21. Someone asked me, Matty, do I think it was too early? No, I don't. Because why? It's almost like a perfect pair with Jokic. I'm getting some out-of-position blocks, but I'm getting an absolute ton of assists. I've tried to target very early assists, rebounds, and points. I've done that. I've ticked my boxes with Jokic, Ball, and almost like 10 assists a game, guys. I'm really happy with that, mate. So take us through from Mike, Scotty Barnes down to you and into Kingy.
Yeah, I really like the Fred VanVleet's old teammate, Scotty Barnes, in there. And I suppose the reason I get excited about that is some out-of-position assists and things like that. Maybe a little bit early for Jaren Jackson Jr., even for a Memphis supporter like me. Look, I start to think a lot of the risk comes out of taking somebody like Damian Lillard when you're taking him, those mid-20s, I'm perfectly comfortable with taking an older guard that had a little bit of a down season. I think you're taking Brunson right up there near his ceiling. And then you start to get into some of these older guys like your Paul Georges, your Kawhi Leonards, some old heads like I know we don't think of De'Aaron Fox as old, but he's been in the league a long time now, and Karl Anthony Towns and DeJounte Murray. We start to know a little bit more about these guys. And look, I like DeJounte at 30. I think that you're taking Karl Anthony Towns in that quite regularly. And as some of these point guards start to go off the board, they do really start to dry up until, in this case, it gets to like the fifth round, and we're talking your your Ja Morants and your Jamal Murrays and blokes like that. So, I don't hate taking point guards off the board at this point.
Yeah, and that's a nice pair for him because if you have a look at Kingy's team, and this is last year, I know he drafted 4 to 6 centers in the league. I think he's just trying to get back to that one. So he's gone Sabonis and then Chet. He's picked up Murray as like that point guard kind of guy there. And then he started off with Şengün at the 4th round. If you look all the way down to the bottom where he drafts again, he's taken Gobert and he knew that Hartenstein wasn't going to come back to him in the 6th round again. So he's taken off there's a lot of centers in a 1-center league, I'm pretty sure it was. We'll look at the teams later. But on the 4th round, yeah, it was a 1-center league, wasn't it?
No, it was a 2-center league, this one.
It was a 2-center league. So we've got 2 centers. He's filled them up, but he's filled them up with like bloody 8 centers. I don't know how the math works. Alperen Şengün, Jalen Williams, Cade Cunningham. You've taken Lauri Markkanen there. That is absolutely insane value for Lauri Markkanen. I thought that was one of your picks of the draft. To get Lauri at pick 34, huge. LeBron James, Tyrese Maxey, Ja Morant, who I was kind of hoping might fall back down towards me and really would fit the whole big increase in assists last year and points. Was really hoping for your Memphis boy, but Noah's Rubin's taking him off the table from me there. Miles Turner, Jalen Johnson going off the board, and Evan Mobley, I thought was a nice pickup here for that power forward center spot, just to balance the rebounds out. Because again, didn't really have any big boys in the pool yet. So I'm starting to pair that up, as you can see, with my previous picks, Fred VanVleet, LaMelo, and that 1 center spot. So I've got that, and I've paired it now with the power forward center, and I'm comfortable there. And then I've taken another one of your Memphis boys who was in my queue, Desi Bane. We forget how good he can be last year. Again, injury year, but mate, love Bane and love him in Memphis this season.
Yeah, and I nearly took Bane, and then I just saw Laurie keep sliding. I think I had DeJounte Murray in the queue, and probably Desi Bane and LeBron James after that. But Laurie kept falling, and I was disappointed that he didn't come back, but I don't think you're going to be taking him in the 50s in too many drafts, to be completely honest.
100%.
You start to get decent value out of your Bam Adebayos and look pretty close to value with Paolo and Franz Wagner. Derek White, I think you're sort of taking him at his ceiling. Jared Allen, completely fine. Pascal Siakam, again, I think that you're getting a 5th round guy in the 5th round, and that was me as well, just sort of plateauing out. Emmanuel quickly has immense upside this year, and they're voting on Darius Garland for an up year with Rudy Gobert. We know what we get at this stage in Rudy's career, so completely fine to be taken at 60.
And this is exactly where Kingy has their spoils there. He's going to look at what he wants to get. He was kind of punting everything. He was just getting his big stats. He was getting rebounds, high field goal percentage, steals and blocks. So he was really trying to feed these. So he's then paired him up with Isaiah Hartenstein. Jimmy Butler still on the board now at pick 52 is massive value for Papi Roy. I love it. I actually had Jimmy Butler in my queue and I was like, no, I'm going to go Bane. I was comfortable with taking Butler around there. But I took Desi Bane. I just wanted the more threes, and I love that out of Desi Bane. I think he's going to be more consistent and healthy. But when he falls down into this next round, absolutely tremendous value for them. Like you said,
okay it's okay if he gets injured at that point in the draft, taking him after about 50. Well, it's not okay if he gets injured, but you're chasing that upside because he's a top 25, top 30 guy on his 100%. Night when he's playing. He's not going to be playing as much. I think that's better value than taking LeBron at, what was he, at 45? I think Jimmy Butler at 62 was better value than that, which sounds a little crazy at times.
It does. Like, you look down, like, we've come back around here, and it's the 52nd pick is Jimmy Butler. You're, like, scratching your head. Like you said, that's double the amount of value you're getting from him. He's a 25 guy, top 25, like you said. So you're just extracting value out when you get to him at this point in time. Like you said, a lot of big starts to go around here. Jalen Duren's gone off. Power forward, Julius Randle, Jaylen Brown, Zion Williamson. He was in my queue. I was hoping he would slip. He didn't. Great choice there from Raf. Jaylen Brown, Boston boy for Alex Reclean. Then Vooch, Tobias Harris, Jamal Murray. And then he's sitting here at 60. And I've got to take him. DeAndre Ayton, a great, just pure center that's sitting around 60 who can get rebounds, who doesn't hurt you in field goal percentages. Might not get a lot of defensive stats, but will rack up some points. And he'll have all of them to do in Portland for this point in time, Matty.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a huge fan of Ayton at that point. But hey, he's burnt me in the past before, so I think it's a me not wanting to get hurt again. And that was probably taking him in the 40s and 50s. But yeah, I just can't see a lot of value in Aiton with some of these other Portland guys. I think that he's a guy that could be bounced out of the league in 3 or 4 years. So
I don't see it being that bad. Look, I think there's a system. He had flashes last year. I see him as when he's in the 60s and 70s. I think that's drafting him at a. We've seen him as a top 30, top 45 player at points. And I don't know if we're going to get back that Phoenix Suns engaged DeAndre Ayton. We all know that he wanted the bag. Like, he's on the record as saying he just wanted to get his money and get out. Like, pretty bloody vocally. As you said, some of his Instagram stories and how he spends that money is questionable. But
I'm a big
I'll
fan.
tell you what, big fan of what content you can see on that Instagram page. But I think it's good. But I've had paired that out with a bit more of a level-headed player and DeMar DeRozan next. Like him in Sacramento, I think he's going to be still very good for points, for rebounds, for assists. He doesn't offer away much in defense, but his percentages are great, and I like that for him. And then Miles Bridges, Brook Lopez, Devin Vassell, Nick Claxton, Brandon Miller, and you've taken my guy. You've taken D'Angelo Russell. Why do you've been one of the D-low truthers. And when you're getting him at, like, this is now 67
70.
in the draft, 74?
77, isn't it?
We've gone through 60, so 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66.
It's a 10.
10 team? Oh, Jesus. Yeah, look, you're getting him around here. Mate, this is great value.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of just getting value, and every year he is a top 50 guy, and people hate him. People think that he's a rat. I don't care. It produces points, and he's just always a guy that I've added. I've taken him in the 80s. I've taken him in the 90s. I had a look. I needed a point guard, and it just represented value at this point. And you might get some question marks. Like, you can analyze this as much as you want, but I just want to go back to my last pick in Julius Randle. And Julius Randle is a perfect pairing with Giannis Antetokounmpo. They just generate excellent stats. And quite often in these other sports or other formats, you talk about having perfect pairings. And every round I've taken Giannis, I've found myself taking Julius Randle. And yes, I've seen drafts where Julius Randle can slide into probably the 70s and 80s. But for me, I think Julius Randle's a top 40 guy once you start to take some of these other stats out. You start to take free throw percentage out, because as soon as you take Antetokounmpo, your free throw percentage is starting to get absolutely shot. So you start adding somebody like Randle, and he can be a top 30 guy once you start to take away some of these stats. So.
Yeah, no, and again, like 25, 9 rebounds, 5 assists a game, it doesn't grow on trees. And like you said, if you're punting free throw percentage, his value is just exponentially increased. So it's an incredibly good pick, and it fits your build, like you said. And then you come back and you've got more of the assists off the board with D'Lo in the next one.
Yeah. Look, I'm probably the D-Lo truther out of all of us. I know I went on record about 100 times last year saying that he's better than Alex Caruso. Look, D'Angelo Russell is still actually young. So, yeah, look, get him off the board. Take everything out. I know that I've seen people that won't take blokes like Miles Bridges and everything because they don't think that they're fantastic blokes. I don't need fantastic blokes on my team. I need a person at 77 that's going to get me assists and that's going to win me a comp. So,
and let's be honest, the Los Angeles Lakers are a greatly unchanged team from last year, and he finished in the rankings around the 60s. So what you're getting there is a little bit of value out of D'Lo. And I'll be honest, I probably would have seen him come back around to me and thought, yeah, if he's going to be there at like pick 89, 90, I'm going to take him. And that's even more value. So I think you've done a good job snapping him up there. Mark Williams, Mikal Bridges there, and OG Anunoby for Kingy. Now, again, this is where Kingy's really getting those defensive he's really trying to put that stranglehold on that. He's taken OG Anunoby, and then into the 81st pick, he has taken Alex Caruso off the board. Yusuf Nurkic, Trey Murphy III, Bradley Beal, Brandon Ingram, Josh Giddey, who was in my queue. I'm thinking, where am I going to get some assists and rebounds? I was leading Josh. Great pick there by Raph. Noah's taken Keegan Murray. Points and threes, starting to get off the board and valuable. Kobe White. I think this was too high for Kobe White at 88.
Yeah, when you start to see somebody like Josh Giddey, who I think is going to start to take some assists off him, was this a league where a few of the guys would have been from out of Australia? Can I just ask you?
It was, yeah, it was. Bunch of guys from around the world here.
Because we're Australian. Quite often I find I do a home league or a league where the boys come around and do the boys and girls. Sorry, we do have a Shani shout out from the home league. We do have some girls that come around for some beers and do the comps. And quite often when you get a bunch of Australians together, I'm seeing Josh Giddey go in the 50s. I think this is about. I think that if we saw him as the 75th best player this year, I think that would be a successful year for Josh Giddey. I think Australians are drafting him a little bit too high, but I think Americans taking him in round, in the 90s or the hundreds are probably too low. So I really think that this is about the best draft or the best spot I've seen Giddey taken in any league.
Yeah, this is probably about on value for him. Well, let's not say on value. It's probably about on balance, as you said, the happy medium between the Australian overdrafting and the international guys and girls out there drafting. And also, got to get Shani. There's a Bitches Be Ballin' League, a female-only league being set up by Kayla Fonte. I'm going to get Shani into that. It should have an absolute cracker. Absolute brilliant analyst women in that one. This was
Shani's a champ too. Loves a beer.
I will get Shani in this league. Heaven or bloody high water, I'll talk to her. Will say I did say this was my perfect draft. This was like my hype happy. Now, this is when I'm looking around and there were guys on the board that I wanted. And I had a bunch of dudes in my queue and I had a plethora of them just before fucking Mike drafted. And he's taken Zach LaVine because I had Zach LaVine in my queue. I had Gafford in my queue. I had Drew Holiday in my queue. I had Austin Reeves in my queue. And I had Jabari Smith Jr. in my queue. And I had all of these guys in my queue. And I was like, where do I go from here? And I was like, you know what I actually need? I really need to lock down my field goal percentage. I need to get that up. I need rebounds. I need some more block shots. And I love Gafford. And so I just took him probably earlier than most people would have taken him. It might have been a misstep, but spoiler alert, and we'll reveal how much. I won this draft by a country mile. Kingy sent me the projections tonight. God bless you, Kingy, from Basketball Monster. And I bloody feasted. Probably because I made a gamble on a guy like Gafford at this point. Because then I paired him up with Drew Holiday to get some more shooting guard things in. Matty, do you think I took him too high? Or do you, because I'm a Gafford truther, or do you think that's about right?
No, I'm somebody that's not taking Derek Lively in drafts because despite Derek Lively's age, I think in a world where Dallas is traveling around that 9th in the West and stuff, then you start to see Derek Lively pick up his minutes and somebody like Daniel Gafford drop off. But Dallas are in win now situation. They just made the NBA Finals. Gafford is the best player in the center position on their team. He is going to be there and he is going to be around abouts the goods. I think that you probably got about 15, 20 spots of value out there out of Gafford.
Yeah, okay, good. And this is why, because, again, big draft boards, and don't forget, you can get that on our Patreon, as well as all this stuff. Check it out.
Want to take your fantasy sports game to the next level? Insight Fantasy Sports are bringing you exclusive content all year round, such as preseason draft guides, player rankings, waiver wire advice, statistical deep dives, priority podcast questions, and tons more. So what are you waiting for? Get full access to the experts. Go to patreon.com/Insight Fantasy Sports and subscribe to Insight Unlimited today.
Yeah, make sure you do it. All of the good stuff is there, including our NBL show, our NFL show, BBL's rolling out. We've got fun galore on the Patreon, just like Drew Holiday. Fun. And I think with the beginning of the season and KP down, he is absolute value there. Starting off the 9th round, we've got him, then Michael Porter Jr., MPJ off the board, and CJ McCollum off the board, Austin Reeves, Cam Thomas. This is about right, can I say? This is, thank God there's some common sense, Matty, because Cam Thomas didn't go in like the 6th or 7th round, or the 6th round at pick 45 or 50. He's fallen back to earth here, and Cam Thomas has gone off the board to Raf in round 9.
Yeah, and I think that's where you should be taking him. I actually haven't found myself taking Cam Thomas in any drafts,
Yeah.
just because people are super high. But I mean, when you start to get analysts together, I think you get a better look at where guys should go.
100%. And this is where like you listen to this podcast and make your notes when you hear that name that you're chasing. What round? Again, like you said, it was a 10-teamer. So this is where it all shakes out at the end of the day for us. And then you just move those along the thing. So he went in the 9th round. Okay, cool. Maybe that's the 8th round in another analyst league, but it's definitely not in the bloody 40s and 50s where we have seen him start to trend towards. In fact, I'll get the data. They take us through the rest of round 9, and I'm going to have a little play around on some other data for a second for Cam Thomas. You can't see that, can you?
No, I can't see it. You've
go.
got Kyle Kuzma in there at 96. Okay with that. Tyler Hero. I was actually just having a look at the schedule for Miami, and when it starts to be as condensed as it is to start the year, you know what? Maybe somebody like Jimmy Butler is getting taken in the right spot, but some of these younger guys who, yeah, he did have an injury-plagued season last year, but I think that we could see him have a bounce-back year. And like this is a guy that could be a top 60 guy, so you start to get your little dart throws out there and see where you could have a win. So Tyler Hero up there, Kyle Kuzma again has a lot of upside. Jabari Smith Jr. As long as they start to move off the Tari Eason experiment and things like this, Jabari Smith Jr. could be good there at 98. Hate Walker Kessler at 99. Hate this man with a passion. He
You do,
on the
don't
draft board, I'll see him at like 140. I just don't think he's good at basketball, and I think that we are taking into account the fact that he's young.
Yeah.
And I think when you see him paired there with an Onyeka Okongwu, who I've had to move up in my drafts because I haven't been able to take him in any of my drafts. Onyeka Okongwu is the type of player that Walker Kessler dreams about. So, yeah.
No, agreed. And I think what we love seeing over on Yahoo this year is he is power forward and center eligible, unlike the only center experience. I like to call that the Matty G petition. And the excessive amount of DMs I sent to Dan Titus last year. Like, can we make the omelet power forward eligible, please and thank you? But it's good to see him going there. And there are starting to be some whispers around that he could get the starting job and Clint Capella could come off the bench. We'll see that when we'll believe it when we see it, Matty, finally, won't we?
Yeah, exactly. But hopefully, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, starting up round 10. I mean, oh, by the way, Cam Thomas has now dropped into the 76th position. So his ADP has absolutely risen. So he has gone into the 76ers now, which means he started off in the 80s and then he went up to 87. But now he's dropped back around and it's continually dropped. And you can look to continue to see that, especially if he set some scoring blistering numbers in NBA preseason. Cam Thomas is going to get into that 55, 60 zone, especially with people, Matty, starting to hit mocks a lot harder. The more mocks that are done, the more that draft data goes all the way up. This was the next pick that I was really happy that Papi Roy made. Love it for him. Well done, Papi. Zubac. I was hoping to pick him up in my next round. I wanted another power forward or a center. Zubac was my number one target in my league. Jalen Suggs. Matty, love this from you. RJ Barrett, upside pick in Toronto this year.
He finished on an absolute tear. And I think he's a Canadian player that's found his home at his home in Canada. So I just really think that if we can see him produce somewhere close to where he was, I think that he's somebody that everybody's been burnt by. How many times have you had a look at a draft and taken him at 70 over the last, what's he been in the league, 4 years? And thought, man, this is an upside pick. This is the year for him. I don't know how many Americans and guys out there watch the Olympics, but we sat there and RJ Barrett was fantastic. So
he was cooking. I'm right there with you. I think, you said it. He's going home, mate. Like he's there. He showed like great work in Toronto last year when he was playing as well before he went out of the lineup. I think he's in for an absolute barn burner of a season. He's never been a top 100 fantasy player, but we say the exact same thing about Josh Giddey. So we expect Josh Giddey to be like 50 positions better magically because he's in Chicago now with a returning Lonzo Ball, with some Ayo Dosunmu and Kobe White. Well, let's give RJ Barrett some credit. he's going to be better this season. And I think that we're going to get some value out of him on draft day. But I do think that the more the hype train builds on him, that value is just going to shrink a little bit. So you've got to be shrewd where you take him and not go too much. But after pick 100, if he's there, Matty, mate, 20-point scorers don't grow on trees.
And to be completely honest, I think this was a really good draft. So if I see this guy going at 77, I'm not completely worried because one of these other guys are sliding down. Outside of Walker Kessler, I'm okay with most of where these guys go on. So if one of these other guys, like if I had a Zubac or a Jabari Smith Jr. or a Tyler Hero or a Kyle Kuzma or something sliding down, especially a Kongwu, because that was my prime target in round 10. If I see these guys slide down, I'm completely happy. So even if RJ Barrett does start to push up in the boards, it's not necessarily a bad thing for good drafters.
100%. And this is where some other guys that are really important around this time, like Chris Paul getting those assists off the board, really good pick there by Alex McLean. Derek Lively, Valanciunas, he was in my queue. So this is another one where I say it was my perfect draft. Yeah, I did. I had my feel. But at the same time, I was still getting sniped, but I was comfortable. Why? Because I had my backup plan. I'm like, I need to get a power forward now and a center. It's what my plan is. So I'm going to put guys in the queue who I like. I also did flirt with Bogdan Bogdanovic, who's gone off after Val, but I'm like, I can probably see where Boggy goes and maybe I get him back around the next one, see how competitive or upsidey we're going to get. Clint Capella wasn't in my queue. Fine. Mike takes him. Great. Good build for Mike. Kaminga was there, though. And that's another one of my 100 targets. I call them my 100 targets. The guys who I've circled around 100 on the draft board, Matty, who I'm like, if these guys are there, I think there's at least 10, 15, 20 rounds potential for value for them. And this is where Kaminga's sitting there for me at the last pick in the 10th round. Absolutely happy with that one. Because then Al Horford's still sitting there on the board. And I get the best of both worlds because Chris Middleton, Kristaps was still there for me. And also Zach Edey was my center. But he was more like I was going to flirt with the last minute. So I managed to get Horford there. Kaminga, Horford, good picks for you. And what do you think about the upside for Kaminga this year in Golden State?
Yeah, I think there's upside for Kaminga. I'm not sure there's a lot of upside for Horford, but I think you've taken him around value so that when you go and chase that upside in somebody like Jonathan Kaminga, it's completely fine to, I suppose, just keep the ship nice and easy, plateau out there with somebody like Al Horford because I think he's at value. And worst case scenario, if you take a guy at, what are we at, 111, and he's the 130th best player, you haven't really lost anything. I think they're going to ask him to play a little bit more until Kristaps is back. And he's not going to be able to play those. What's the man, 38 years old? He's not going to be able to play these back-to-backs, which are so prevalent here in the NBA.
But that's so good for Boston as well because they only have 13 back-to-backs this year. The most in the NBA, to be fair, is 16, I'm pretty sure. 13 for Boston. So there's 13 games that he's going to be down. So let's just pencil him in for 69 games. Let's just pencil him in for that many. Let's pencil him in for that and see where we go. Next up, then Chris Middleton, Kristaps. Again, like you said, that handcuff is gone. No IR spots. He's there. You take him. If you get an IR spot, see what you do with it. Zach Edey, Memphis starter? Question mark. Terry Rozier, Jeremy Grant, and you. Denny Advia, I love this pick for you, mate.
Mate, I find it absolutely mind-boggling that Portland, in a rebuilding phase, has traded picks for Denny Avdia. They must be some special kind of high in general, but also some special kind of high for Denny Avdia. They see him as part of the
very
future.
Moist environment, very good for growing things, I hear.
Yeah, they must just be super high on him. He was good in Washington. He was probably the best. I did a lot of the waiver wire shows last year, and it felt like I was talking about Denny Avdia all year. I honestly think that he's a genuine keeper this year. I think that he'll be top 100. He gets some of those defensive stats. He still will be able to score points. And I think when Portland are struggling and when Portland are being blown out, he will still be getting good minutes. So, yeah, I can't see a downside in taking Denny Avdia at 117.
No, neither can I. I think it's a great pick from you there. And when other guys are around this board here, the other next best pick that I love was Puppy Roy taking Jakob Poeltl around here because it's Gordon Herbert-Jones and then the boy, the homie, Jakob, is sitting right there. And I'm like, geez, that's a good pick for you after pick 100. Legitimately could be top 80, 85 on the year. So like that from him. And Kingy, doing Kingy things. Taking Dyson Daniels. He was going to lay his claim to his boy, and I'm glad he's doubled up there. I love Kingy's build. He's put it together, but as again, it's very, very heavy with centers and bigs. So just making sure those rotational minutes are there is going to be a struggle, I think, for sometimes at his team. But it's a draft because the next name on the board that goes off is Trace Jackson-Davis that I love the upside there. Jordan Poole. Now, this is late for Jordan Poole. Like, I've seen him coming back down in value to around the 100s. Mate, Jordan Poole could be top 85 this year. So getting him in the 12th round, like 110 picks have gone off. This is good value for him.
He's somebody that I found sitting in my queue for the longest of times.
Were you tempted on the Advia pick though? Can I ask? This is a question then for you. Were you tempted because it's the name Jordan Poole and people know that the name? Were you tempted to take him last pick, and even just because he's more of a popular player and people know him and points are so scarce? Were you sitting there like you said? Yeah. Were you going to take him and then and see? But then you took Advia over him. So what were you thinking in that spot?
I think Avdia is one of my guys at this stage in the year, and you start to get in with industry guys, and you know what? I knew that we were going to be doing a podcast or we were going to be chatting about it, and I was going to be putting it out, and I'm completely fine with letting the world know where I want Denny to be taken, where I think he should be taken. But much like you taking LaMelo Ball at 20, I was hurt so much by taking Jordan Poole last year. I actually traded for him in quite a few leagues with our good friend Mally. And he, knowing your teammates, he is a panic trader. He saw Jordan Poole going down and he started panic trading out of Jordan Poole in every league. And I'm like, no, you know what? Everybody, industry legends, everybody was so high on Jordan Poole for a reason and because there's a chance of upside. And it never eventuated. I think I'd been hurt by him so much last year that I will just let, in this case, Jordan Poole ruin Pappy's year. At 122, I don't think he can ruin it too much. I think that it is still a good pick, but that's why I hadn't taken Jordan Poole at this stage. I put him in my queue at about pick 100. I think I might have even added him close to when I added Onyeka Okongwu, but I just kept bypassing him because, the next guy is definitely my guy as well. So,
and see, that's the great thing as well. Like, this is you have the opportunity to take the guy that you want, to stake your claim on a guy, like you said, like Danny. Like, hey, look, I reckon he's a top 100 player. So if Danny Advia is going to fall to me at 117, by all means, come on home with Mattrix. Love that for you. But this is where in drafts, it's really important to know who else is still left on the board when you're setting your queue, because a guy like Jordan Poole, a 20-point scorer, 4 assists a game, maybe 2 or 3 rebounds, not a lot of defense, let's not lie. Not a strong suit for the pool party, but he's really valuable around here. Guys like him, Colin Sexton, Kuminga, the 20-point scorers around that 100 mark aren't really there, and he's starting to come back in a little bit. So love that. Portis, Tyus Jones, here's another one of your guys, Manny, like you just said. He's going to find a nice little home. And do you think Memphis things in Phoenix?
Yeah, I think that when we saw him in Memphis, he was surrounded by some really good guys, and he was getting starter minutes because our point guards were quite often injured. Every time you started to see a point guard get injured in Memphis, you added Tyus Jones. He would go out and be a top 50 guy. I think we could see something similar. I think Devin Booker at point guard is not what's best for the team. It's good for stats, but I think Tyus Jones is going to have the ball in his hands. He's going to be facilitating. He's going to, at the very least, be bringing the ball up the floor. And I think because he won't be a focal point, I think because people will be so focused on defending these other guys, that Tyus Jones is going to get his all year, and at 124, excellent value.
Yeah, love that for you. Asar Thompson going off there to Alex McLean. Anthony Simon. So now I had some guys because I did have Jordan Poole in my queue. I wanted another scorer. I wanted to pour on some points towards the end. I wanted points. I wanted threes, and I wanted some assists or some steals. I just wanted to feed those areas. Just get some more countings with my last 2 picks. So I've had a look. Anthony Simons was in my queue. Raf's taken him off the board. Pods gone. Connolly gone. Collins, he was in my queue. I liked him around this value. I just saw him sitting there and I was like, geez, John Collins still about. Great value from Mike. But then that led me with Dante DiVincenzo. And I actually auto-picked that one because I was walking in somewhere and I had him in my queue up the top. So I was fine with that. I was like, oh, it's counting down. It's fine. I'll get back to it in 30 seconds. Because I then had a pick of dudes at the end who with upside and who I liked. So I had Jalen Green, and I've taken him over Keontae George. I took Jalen Green. I just think he's got better the last couple of years. I think he had moments. Last year, he had a very big moment, making top 50 value for the first time. So if I'm taking him at pick 100, like in pick 120, by all means, 100% will take a crack. And if it doesn't work out, I'll use him with someone else and trade him for, because points are the sexy girl at the party and you get noticed by points. Draymond Green, not Jalen, but another Green. Christian Brown, Keontae George, great upside for Noah there. Good picking from him. Tara Eason, Shaden Sharp, and your last one, you'll find this guy around all the time, Wendell Carter Jr.
Yeah, and it was one that only went 130 deep. I have liked to take him a little bit after this, but I actually hadn't taken a person that was center eligible since my very first pick, to be completely honest with this one. So I was targeting Draymond Green due to the fact that I don't care that he misses those free throws. So look, Wendell Carter Jr., I'm chasing the upside. It's also my last pick in a draft. If he doesn't pan out, you can drop him, but I think Wendell Carter Jr., when healthy, has been really good. So I was okay with taking him. Can I have a bit of a chat about your Keontae George statement before? I actually had breakfast with one of the Utah Jazz assistant coaches during the offseason, and he said Keontae George is one of the biggest upside guys. He's worked closely with him. He's one of those guys that was probably, and I'm not going to drop his name, he's one of those guys that played high level of college basketball. He's now in his early 30s. He gets out there in the gym with a lot of the guys. He just says Keontae George is an elite worker. Colin Sexton would be the safe pick at this stage, but he said by the end of the year he wouldn't be surprised if we were seeing the minute split swing the other way. You won't see it to start the year. Colin Sexton is getting paid the money, but guys in Utah think that Keontae George is the future point guard.
And he is. And he made that statement quite clear last year. I think he played excellent basketball. I think Colin Sexton had a great year in Utah. I actually think Utah was spoiled for choice. I just don't think they're a very good team yet. I think they're young. I think the Lowry Markkanen sticking around thing with the new deal after all the talk of him going to Golden State, and we heard that is a very different dynamic for Utah. I wonder what the assistant coach bloke said about the Lowry state. But you look around and look, you might not be the highest guy on Walker Kessler, but he's a big, dependable big man, and he can do big man things against big men. Cool. That serves a utility function in the NBA. But you look at the talent of Keontae George, they've drafted incredibly well there. You look at the hands that they're in there with Brad Stevens, who would trade literally his own grandmother to get the best out of the team. And I think there is potential in Utah for them to be a very good competitive team in the Western Conference in the next couple, like maybe next 2 or 3 years, if they bring in the right pieces. And I love Keontae George because Colin Sexton was good last year. Like, he was really good. And he was someone who was getting traded in a lot of leagues. Like, you and I saw his name being thrown around in a lot of trades. I know I was throwing trade with him when he was up, like swinging up. And my default answer on trades is no. Like, you've got to sell me on a trade, because I'm like, if I've got who I've got and I've drafted well and I'm winning, I'm kind of cool. But when Colin Sexton came to me and I had a look at his numbers, I was like, that was a guy. But Keontae George was one of the rookies that I was super high on. I picked him up in a bunch of leagues, but I really like him there. So in the last round, 100% okay with that. Just like Alex's pick of Shaden Sharp there. Last round, give it a crack. And then you see other rookies going down there after Dennis Schroeder. Are you a Dennis Schroeder owner, Sloan? Yes, he is. Because then Alex and Kalel Ware have gone off in the last 2 picks, Matty. So I guess let's go back and let's look at the teams. Let me go to my team. Here it is. Let me go to the roster, and we'll go to like yours really quickly. So this is how mine's shaken out at the end of the day. LaMelo, Bane, Fred VanVleet, DeMar DeRozan, Evan Mobley, Dan Gafford, number 1 pick Jokic right there for me, Ayton, Drew Holiday, Jonathan Kuminga, Al Horford, Dante DiVincenzo, and Jalen Green. And if I go into matchups, I should find it here. No, I'm not about Noah, but if I scroll down, here we go. Mattrix from Insight Fantasy. Take us through your team, brother.
Mate, we've got Donovan Mitchell, Kawhi Leonard, D'Angelo Russell, Lauri Markkanen, RJ Barrett, Pascal Siakam, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Wendell Carter Jr. I see him in my starting center spot, even though I took him last due to some of the picks that I took. Julius Randle, that perfect pairing with Giannis, Bradley Beal, Tyler Hero, Denny Avdia, and Tyus Jones.
But you've gone into a couple of Phoenix picks there as well. A little bit of a double up there, but you can see a lot of quality there. Points, big time, right there. And the great thing about this as well, you've got a couple of really high volumes. So even though you were a little bit worried about your free throw percentage, you've got some elite free throw shooters who do get to the line quite a lot in high volume as well. The only thing is the high volume of free throws from Julius Randle, like you said, can hurt with Giannis, but you do pump it up and make it more competitive when you bring in guys who get to the line 5 or 6 times, like Donovan Mitchell, like Kawhi Leonard, and like Lauri Markkanen. So it doesn't do you an absolute complete disservice. And why I have said off the rip, when we're drafting, we don't know how we're doing. And we're pretty good. Like the teams are really balanced, especially in these analyst ones. And I said it to Kingy afterwards. I said to Kingy, did you get your basketball monster projections? Because he brings up the projections sometimes in some of the shows I've done, because I wanted to share it with you. So Kingy said, yep, give me a second. And he's logged in. And this is why this was my perfect draft, because take a look at this win percentage in the column in the win percentage column there, Matty. That is huge.
Yeah.
It is at 0.69%. That's big. So if you're listening to this one, my win percentage league, according to the projected data, was 0.69%. Kingy's come in second in this draft one, but he's at 0.53. Which is a massive, massive gap in this one, considering that the lowest gap down there from Papi Roy on this one was 4.07. But the biggest group here we said is, look at this tight pack from Sloan, from Steve, from Raf, Noah, Mike, you and Alex. There's not a lot of difference between, let's say, Raf down to you. It's 0.03 between it, 0.023. That's not a lot of variance, man.
No, it's not. And again, saying it earlier on in the podcast, I think when you get analysts together, you start to get a better draft. I do think sometimes in your home leagues, you're going to get, I think I would get Onyeka Okongwu maybe a little bit later where I was hoping to get in. I think Jordan Poole would have got taken at 80 and you wouldn't have got him at probably where he is better value there at the 122. But I think that this draft looks a lot more like our draft boards and our projections are going to look at, because everybody just knew what was up.
Yeah, and when people are sliding, other analysts are letting them slide as well for good reason. Everyone's starting to get the same thoughts. We're hitting the preseason. We're starting to hear more and more come out of it. And so this is where, like, when I say this is my perfect draft, it's not my perfect team. But when there were guys who were just falling around in this one, this is what you should aim for. Your perfect draft should not be something that you have pre-made in your head. It should not be like, I've got this guy in my draft beforehand. I love this guy. I love the Grizzlies. I've got to get Ja. Your perfect draft, what will absolutely just fucking crush and win you that cup at the end, is you just taking good quality dudes who are falling, others aren't taken, who you can back with confidence, but just having like 2 or 3 other around that zone, especially if you are at the turn. Because you want to have the spring rolls, you want the dim sims, and you want the sweet chili sauce, because fuck knows you don't want to be left with Matty samosas.
You don't want to be left with samosas. That's probably what I can take from this draft more than anything.
So make sure that you get all that down. It was a massive win. And I don't think in all the drafts, and even I've chopped up with Kingy beforehand when he's talked about projections, like the gap has been that big from first to second. So it was an absolutely massive draft, but I'll put this up on our Patreon as well. You can jump on there and get this one, a list of that team. Mate, like and subscribe to all the things. Come back and see us soon, Matty.
Mate, cheerio. Thanks for having us on again. I know I was a big part of NBA last year, but I've been on getting involved in a lot of other endeavors. But if you got any Alex
dadding.
Sarr
It's called
questions,
it could be called being a dad again. That's what your biggest endeavor is.
oh, I thought I was going to talk about watching NBL, but I've probably watched more games of Alex Sarr than anybody else you've talked about. So yeah, pop into my DMs and I'll let you know why you should take him at 140, but expect him to be the 77th best player this year.
Oh my God, the man is high on something. Hey, take care, everyone. Like and subscribe to all the things at Insight. We'll catch you soon.
Cheerio.